Hello everyone, welcome to the African Language Conversations channel. I'm glad you could join me today. Please stay with me from beginning to the end for an exciting conversation about African languages. So today I will continue reacting to readers' comments, people who read Muthoni Thangwa's children should be taught in mother tongue at school. It is an article that appeared in the Daily Nation many years ago, and the comments that readers gave are telling. They're very important, and they deserve or they require a response as a way of learning or as a way of conversing or discussing the different important aspects of African languages. So today I'm reacting to comments made by a reader, and this is the comment that reader made. So he or she said, "What's the value of this discourse? Language doesn't engender ethics in a human being. What Kenya badly needs is a shift in its mindset. MOE, or Ministry of Education, should be focusing on how to introduce ethics as a mandatory subject instead of focusing on mundane issues such as medium of instruction. To save our republic from imminent implosion, concerted efforts should be directed at instructing our children in subjects that will cause them to acquire positive values as human beings. Whether these are taught in English, Luhya, Kamba, or Swahili is neither here nor there. Teach children to be less tribalistic in Kikuyu, Luo, or whatever language. Kenya needs upright men and women. That's the bottom line." So the reader, or this reader, has chosen to be very dismissive without thinking carefully, attentively, and critically about the important issue of language of instruction, which Muthoni was talking about. Language of instruction in Kenya cannot be taken lightly. And I think, in my opinion, Kenyans do not discuss this issue enough. They should be doing more. They should spend more time discussing the language of instruction in Kenya, because it's very, very important. Language is everything when it comes to communication. You need to use language that a person understands in talking to them, in teaching them. You want a language that they can understand. Language of instruction in schools in Kenya especially, and I think across Africa, is very, very important because learning depends on it. It will not be an issue in a monolingual country, like where everyone speaks and understands one language. But in the case of Kenya, it's different. There are different languages that can potentially be languages of instruction. So we need to pay attention to that language of instruction. So what the reader is saying is not true. It's not true, and going back to what they said, whether these are taught, whether the values are taught in English, Luhya, Kamba, or Swahili is neither here nor there. Teach children to be less tribalistic in Kikuyu, Luo, or whatever language. Kenya needs upright men and women, and that's the bottom line. But you need to use a language that the student understands. You need to use a language that the student is comfortable with. If you teach those values in a language that the student doesn't understand, you will not get anywhere, because the student will not understand and they will therefore not learn. If you teach the students in English and those students don't understand English, you're doing zero work. You're not doing anything. So the very first step in anything in a school context, if you want to teach someone, the very first thing you need to do is to choose the language that they understand. You decide that values are important. Yes, then go ahead, pick a language. That's the very first step you need to do. Choose a language that the student understand. So if you don't, then you will fail miserably. Any topic, any subject, whatever it is, you have to choose and use a language that student understands. So I agree with the reader. I agree with the comments that moral education in Kenya is very important. It is important based on where Kenya is, based on the problems that Kenya faces, the ubiquitous corruption, tribalism, and all that. So it's very it's understandable that the reader should be concerned about this, and it's understandable that they should prefer and that they should that they feel the government through the Ministry of Education they should focus on that. So it's important. But in spite of that, in spite of the fact that moral education is important, we shouldn't dismiss language of instruction. Language of instruction is very, very important. And we should, when it's wrong for the reader to dismissively say, language doesn't engender ethics in a human being. What Kenya needs badly is a shift in mindset. So Ministry of Education should be focusing on how to introduce ethics as a mandatory subject instead of focusing on mundane issues such as language of instruction. So the reader is very dismissive of the medium of instruction, which is wrong. So it could be true that it could be true that language doesn't engender ethics. I'm not even giving that serious thought because that's not relevant to the article that the reader is commenting on. Muthoni, the author of that article, never said anything about language engendering ethics. She wasn't talking about ethics in that article. She was talking about the language of instruction. Think about this issue seriously. She wasn't even discussing the curriculum at all. She was just talking about language of instruction or medium of instruction because it's important in the case of Kenya. There's a choice to be made between English, Kiswahili, maybe people don't talk about Kiswahili as much as a language of instruction, and there's also a choice of mother tongue. That's what Muthoni was talking about. In some areas, it's definitely important for mother tongue to be used. Maybe not in the cities, but there are areas within the country where the wrong choice has been made. People or kids are forced to learn in English, which is maybe not the right language for them. So it's important to think about the medium of instruction. Yes, ethics is important and should be added to the curriculum if it's not there already. But it's not the only subject that students need to learn. And whatever subject is added, whatever is decided that is important to be taught, it has to be taught in a language that students understand. And thinking about values, the reader who made those comments should actually need to think hard and ask important questions. Think about values and ask important questions. Positive values that he or that reader is talking about are regularly taught in churches and mosques. Most Kenyans claim to be Christian or Muslim. And in addition, religious education is taught as a subject in schools. So it's possible that these that kids already know about these important values. They probably know about it. So ask questions. The reader should be asking, what is happening? Why are Kenyans, why are kids not living like these values? Why are they not putting them into practice? Perhaps you look at what is happening in Kenya, and you know that some of the values are applied. So there's a tendency to apply the values which most Kenyans know, which they have. They apply them selectively. So what is happening? Why do Kenyans choose to engage in corruption when they are upright in other areas? Why do they choose to be tribalistic? So those are the questions that the reader should think about. Perhaps it's a lack of or an absence of role models. Perhaps there's no punishment for being corrupt or being tribalistic. So think about that. So it's not just a question of introducing value education or moral education in schools. Think about what's happening. Don't lump everything together and say, yeah, the issue of language of instruction is not important. It is important. So to summarize and conclude, I would like to remind the reader and people who think like them, people who dismiss and don't want to think about language of instruction, people who don't take language of instruction in Kenya seriously, it is very, very important to think about language of instruction. It's very important to think about it seriously. Language of instruction is not a light issue in Kenya and Africa. It's everything. It's very important. It's not a mundane issue. It should be discussed more often. It actually should be discussed regularly, and it should be given the seriousness it deserves. And the reason is that effective teaching depends on the choice of an appropriate language of instruction. Learning depends on it. Successful learning depends on the medium of instruction. Meeting objectives of education depends on it. You can't just dismiss it like that. Language of instruction is very, very, very important in the case of Kenya and other African countries that have prioritized or that tend to prioritize English over local languages. So take language of instruction seriously. It's responsible for some of the problems that education has in Kenya. It's in part responsible for many Kenyans, many young Kenyans not getting the best out of education in spite of the amount of time they spend in school. So please take the language of instruction, take the issue of language of instruction in Kenya and Africa seriously. Thank you. I hope I'll see you in the next episode. Please, let's keep conversations about African languages going, and tell other people. If you listen to this and if you watch this, please tell others about this, share and comment, and ask questions in the comment section, and I'll be happy to reach out to you. I'll be happy to respond to those comments, or if there are questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.